Now, we start off with the first part of the project, that is building a deep learning model. This will actually be a very simple sequential model with only dense hidden layers, meaning that for our layers, we will be only using dense layers with maybe different activation functions. Now you can see that the first thing that I have done is actually mount my drive or where I am storing the data set to the Google Colaboratory. The next thing you can see that is I am actually importing my necessary libraries. And you can see that the NumPy library, Pandas library, and both the Seaborn and Matplotlib for visualization. The next thing you can see that for deep learning, I'm using the TensorFlow package and calling out sequential and dense. So our sequential model and dense layer. So I've actually provided the link for the dataset here, and you can refer to the site for more understanding about the data. So you can see that I've commented out the link for the dataset, and the next thing I'm doing is actually calling out my data from the drive. So after writing the variable name dot head function, you can see that the first 5 data points are being shown here, and a lot of columns are present, some having integer values, some having float values, and some are categorical type data. So before we move forward, actually let me clear out some of the terms from the data set so that it becomes a little easy to understand the data first. So the first term I would be telling you about is bounce rate. You can see that the bounce rate is present here. Okay, so it actually represents the percentage of visitors who enter the site and then leave rather than continuing to view other pages on the site itself. So that is the first that I wanted to talk you about, that is bounce rates. So this is a very important, I would say, column or data point because it is telling me that if there was a visitor, then did he stay on the site or did he directly before moving to my goal, I would say, page, he went on to some other site. See, your site might have a lot of pages, okay, showing different kind of information for different products or services. But your goal page, I would say, or where you want the visitor to visit actually, would be the page where actually the payment is being done, or you are actually asking the visitor to buy anything. So that is what I'm trying to say by goal page. And the bounce rate is telling me that the visitor entered the site and then left rather than continuing to view other pages. So the next is actually that I'm talking about would be exit rates. Now exit rates refer to the number of times visitors have left a site from a single page. Meaning, let's say that a visitor came onto any one of the pages from the site, and rather than, I would say, going on to another page exploring that site itself, the visitor saw the first page and left from there itself only. Now the next I'm going to talk about is page values. Now this value actually intends to give you an idea of which page in your site contributes more to your site's revenue. Meaning that I talked about our goal page. If a page is actually helping visitor to go forward to the goal page, then the page value would be high. If the page is not contributing at all for the visitor to go to the goal page, then the value would be 0. I would be using the describe function so you can see that what the max value and the min value for page values is, and the rest are understandable. If there are some columns that you aren't able to understand, then just visit the link itself or search the term itself. You would get to know more about the data in that way also. Now, Now from this, let me just clear that out that our target column is revenue, meaning a boolean representing whether or not the user completes the purchase. So it might happen that the visitor actually did reach the goal page, but maybe he didn't purchase anything. So then again, that would be a false for us because the final goal point was for the visitor to actually buy something from us, which he didn't or she didn't. So with that in mind, the revenue is categorized as false or true. And that is what our target variable is. So next you can see that I am using the describe function, and for all the integer or float type data, you can see the count just telling me that there are 12,000 data points, and the mean for each column, the minimum, standard deviation, this is standard deviation, and these are actually quartiles. Okay, so the quartiles for each column. Now you can see that for column administrative, the max value is 27, the min value is 0. But for administrative duration, the second column, I have a min value of 0, but max value of 3398.75. So you can see that the ranges are actually very, I would say, far away from each other. A value of 27 is very small as compared to 3398. So if you want, before moving forward, you can actually normalize this column so that the ranges are actually comparable for both the columns, or you can standardize the whole of the data itself, or maybe sub part of the data, so that the ranges come in a closer and more appropriate way, so that this maybe changes to only 33 or 34 rather than being at 3000. Similarly, you can do that for other columns also. But the reason why I actually wanted to show this was that you can actually gain statistical knowledge about your data without much of coding or without actually maybe manipulating the data, just using the describe function itself. So the next thing is, yeah, dot shape. So dot shape is basically giving me the cardinality of the data set, telling me that there are 18 columns and 12,330 data points. With this, we come forward and look for null values in the data. So dot is null dot sum is giving me the number of null values for each of the column. Now this is pretty much clean data as all the values are present for all the columns. There is no null value. It might happen that there might be some outliers in your data, and you might want to figure them out. So what you can do is basically take one column and see what its mean is and what its maximum value is. From that itself, you can get a rough idea, not a generalized idea, but only a rough idea if the dataset is having outliers or not. Or what you can do is use matplotlib or seaborn to build graphs for the columns you might think that have outliers. I haven't done that, assuming that there might not be any outliers. So I'm simply moving forward to look at the correlations for all the data points, or I would say for all the columns. Yeah, that is better. So I'm using my matplotlib to size out the figure, and using my seaborn, and from that heat map function, which is building me a map for each of the columns and their correlation. So you can see that the pandas variable where my data set is stored is having dot core, which is giving me the correlation, and I'm sending that as my first parameter to my seaborn heat map function. So you can see that a lot of values are present, and there's a bar shown for 1 2 reaching -3 -4 maybe. Okay, maybe -2 -3. So what this tells me is basically, yeah, let me just talk about correlation first, because it it can happen that some might not understand what correlation is. So correlation is basically a metric that is telling you that for two columns how much related they are or how much dependent they are on each other. Okay, so let's say there's a column A and column B having a correlation of 0.8. Okay, positive 0.8. That tells me that A and B are very much directly related to each other. Meaning, if a value in A changes and increases, it will happen that the value in B corresponding to A will also increase, and by the ratio of 0.8. So what you can do is understand if two columns are too much correlated or related to each other. They can be directly related, they can be inversely related, but the point is to erase out or drop one of the two columns if they are if both the columns are highly correlated. This is because a column that is very much correlated to another column will not signify much or will not be able to express much to the model and won't help the model in generalizing over the data itself. And when I say generalize, meaning to understand the patterns in the data. So for that, we are finding out if there are actually two columns that are highly correlated, and if there are, that means we are going to drop one of them. Another thing you can do is, actually, this is not for categorical target variables, where actually there are two classes or multiple classes, but for, uh, I would say, but for data set where you're actually predicting a number, where actually you're using regressor classes, maybe linear regressor or random forest regressor. What you can do is also include the target class or the target column inside the correlation graph and see if a column is very much related or very much correlated to your target variable. That means that the column is determining or is dominating at determining the value for your target class. Now it might not be much clear from just me telling you about it. Having a practical example would be much better. So yeah, I can't show you for the regressor, but I can show you for classes, or I would say categorical, like true, false, determining two classes or multiple classes. Okay, so first we can see that for administrative, you can see that there's the value of 1 because it is highly correlated with itself, obviously. And then there's the value of 0.6, 0.38, and so on. Similarly, for all the, you can say, integer or float columns. But what I want to actually show you is that values like 0.86 are high, and you can see that product related is actually very much directly correlated to product related duration. So we can remove one of them so that our model, when taking this data, is able to generalize over the data well. And I'm not talking only about positive values like 0.86 or 0.91. Even negative values, if they are very high or very low, closer to -1, you have to remove them also. Though it actually depends on person to person. One might say even 0.6 is a very high value, I would remove. But some might say, yeah, let's consider 0.6 as it is. Only remove the 0.86 and 0.91 values. So with this in mind, you can see that later on I'm dropping administrative, informational, and product related duration columns. So now we are going for the categorical data. Actually, I really like categorical data because they are hidden gems. If you're able to extract them, then you can find even more information from the data itself, and it can help the model because now the model doesn't have to, computationally work even more to find the hidden values. It can simply use all the data that you have extracted and is able to perform even better. And with that, we're going for finding categorical columns first. So first is product related, and you can see that it has a length of 311, meaning that from 12,000, more than 12,000 data points, only 311 unique values are present inside the product related. So, and you can see that it ranges from 1 to 399. Okay, okay, it not actually ranges from 1 to 399. You can see a 409 present here. Okay. But the length is 311. Basically, 311 unique values are present inside product related column. So how we are actually looking at this data is using the dot, basically value count function, that is telling me that for this data or for this series, it is finding me all the unique values and how many times each has occurred inside the data. So the value 1 has occurred 622 times inside the product related column. Simply I'm doing this for month, operating system, visitor type, browser, region, and all that. So after that, I am able to understand that some of them are categorical data. I'm extracting information. Basically, I'm handling categorical data to build even more data so that I can put that directly into the model and it is able to understand the patterns itself. So the first thing I am using is get dummies. That is basically extracting the information. And you can see that I have sent the visitor type column as the parameter or as the parameter. Now the next thing you can see is I'm using the concat function to join both the shop, that is my variable for dataset, and the visitor, that is the new data that I have made from get dummies. And you can see that, yeah, you can see that we only had till revenue in our original data set, and now three more columns are present telling me new visitor, other, and returning type. So these are the categories that were present in the visitor type column, and I've now extracted each one, and you can see that there's two zeros and then a one. This is telling me or defining that for the first data point, the visitor was actually a returning visitor. So 1 is present here and 0 for both the other categories. Now I'm going forward and segregating the target variable from my data set, which is input as y. And now you can see that in the data set, the weekend and revenue both are considered as false or true. Only two values determined by false and true. So for the weekend, what I'm doing is actually converting it into 1 and 0. So false for 0 and true is converted to 1. And how I'm doing this is using my as type function over the weekend. So I'm building a new column and having ones and zeros as its data points. So now you can see that after using dot shape, the number of columns have turned to 15. Now remember, we started off with 18 columns, and even after extracting the categorical data type, we have come up with only 15 columns. Now I won't say only 15, but yeah, we have come down from 18 to 15. So next thing you can see is that we have our sequential model. So I've instantiated it, okay, and have now added dense layers with activation function as ReLU. And for my last output layer, I would say, I have my dense layer with activation function as softmax and units 2 telling me that there are two classes. So after compiling my model, you can see that, okay, yeah. So basically, this is a very brief about what each part of this code is doing. And you can see that just about, like I said, for our two classes that are true or false, we have our soft activation function and two units in our dense layer. Also, while compiling the model, we are using Adam optimizer along with accuracy as metric to maximize the same and minimize our defined loss, that is categorical or sparse categorical cross entropy with each epoch. Now, let me just define one thing, that categorical cross entropy is used mostly when there are classes, or I would say there are more than three classes that are to be predicted. Let's say there are classes A, B, C, D, okay, not just a true and false. That's when categorical cross entropy is used. Or for only when there's a two class prediction, we mostly use binary cross entropy or maybe sparse categorical cross entropy for sparse data. Now you can see that I've used the fit function to now train the model. That gives me with 83, 84, yeah, 83, 84 percentile of accuracy. And the even the training accuracy reaches 90 or 91 at max. So the model is not overfitting. And I can, yeah, live with this accuracy for the data set. Though if you want, you can increase the accuracy by using different kinds of layers rather than just using dense layer and activation functions as ReLU. And that is up to you. But for this project, I have just used those only. So after I have built the model and trained the model, I'm just saving the model so that I can use that specific model inside my Django web application itself. Okay. And for that, I've used this. So with this, we come at the last part for the first part of the course. And now we will be jumping on to the second part, that is building our web application using Django framework.